y'all. Welcome to another episode of TNFro is Reading. I haven't posted in almost 3 weeks, and there's been a whole bunch of wilding out in the world today. Why I haven't posted? I've been in the twines of trying to sell my first home here in Fayetteville. The process was made easier because I was able to do it all online through a company called OfferPad, so big ups to them. I discovered a lot of stuff that I hadn't even thought about in years, and doing in the midst of a pandemic has been interesting. There is a high probability that I will be completely out of North Carolina by September. It's just the waiting and getting things done. It's been anxiety provoking, and since this is a passion project, I haven't had a whole bunch of energy or passion to be able to post this podcast. But since it is cathartic in a lot of ways, me doing this post today, I'm hopeful will continue to spur other conversations about what I'm going to talk about today, which does include how do you go about selling and buying during a pandemic. The whole Black Lives Matter, the debate continues because it wasn't as if my life or any other African American's life never did matter. It's just now cool to actually say that out loud. The 2020 vote is coming up. I'm still very, very concerned about that and why I'm taking my own action to participate in that process to make sure that people are able to get out and vote. It's educating yourself, knowing where to vote, knowing and making sure that you are properly registered, etc. Just talking about, we just came off of this July 4th holiday, and it's because it's only July 5th, and how I celebrated it in the quarantine, which has been still self-imposed, even though I've been sheltering in place since March. Also, I'm not understanding the politicalization of the mask. What was that all about? And now it was crazy how people took a stand against something that could protect not only their lives, but other people's lives, and what was up with that. And even though I haven't been blogging that much, I've actually completed, or I started working on another screenplay about the Black Nouveau Rich, which I've mentioned in previous episodes, but I've actually changed that into a potential novelette, or using that, the writings that I've done just over the last couple of days to put in another potential screenplay. I think it'll be interesting because, of course, it's based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's where my heart is going back to. I-40 to 75 South, bitches, I'm out. So, thank you for joining me, and I hope you will enjoy this episode as much as I've enjoyed creating. One of the things that I do, because I work from home and have been for a while, I have a bit of white noise always in the background. And one of those things that I have, my big things that I like to watch, besides 90 Day Fiancé in its many iterations, is I also watch the reruns of Dr. Phil on OWN. And there was one guy talking about how he wants to be a rock star. He had all these guitars that he had been bilking his mother and parents out of their money to sponsor his poser life. I'm actually really grateful for the fact that I do have a daytime job. My daytime job allows me, again, to work from home. They train me to be good at what I do, and then they just allow me to continue to do it. And so I don't have the same pressure to, produce a podcast because I'd get no income from this. This is a way for me to talk some things out, to interview my friends. I don't have any sponsors, but I'm not crazy. It's not like I'm going to basically say anything that's going to be completely out of the way. But that daytime job has not only allowed me to be able to produce and have time to produce the podcast, it's because I'm actually in a better place. It's actually afforded me the opportunity, to, instead of just temporary digs in Tennessee, I want to be able to move permanently, to Tennessee. One of the ways that I get to permanently move to Tennessee is very simple. Um, I have property in North Carolina because when I built and moved into this home in 2001, I never thought that I was going to ever leave North Carolina. I moved here specifically for the military. I was supposed to do my time as active duty Air Force, and then I was to take a job, probably locally. It was close enough to Virginia if I had to get, back home if I needed to. But this was supposed to be my forever home. Little did I know, after getting my North Carolina license was actually my second license. Little did I know that I was going to get 12 other medical licenses, to practice. I moved to Tennessee back in 2015 or 2014? It's 2015, that I moved back to Tennessee permanently. I thought I was. I took another job, and then I moved to Tennessee. And I basically, besides Charlotte, Chattanooga, the other C, I call it, was the only other place that I considered home. I did not know, even when I got my MBA at UT, in 2003, and then I made that move in 2015, permanent, that I thought it was permanent. Actually, it was 2014, my bad. 2014 back to Tennessee. I did not know that I was going to find my home and always, consider that, a potential home. And so when I placed my house on Bankers Drive up for sale through a company called OfferPad, during a pandemic, no less, I did not know that, number one, it's trying because having a lot of people, in my house or traipsing through my house, that was not okay. And people don't respect boundaries. They will rock up to your house as soon as you list it on Zillow, even there's not posted, and will roll up to your door, knock on your door without mask on. I don't. I did not want to have to take comments, being exposed to COVID. I have some risk factors, for the disease, and people are just trifling. And this process itself has been harrowing in the fact that, cleaning up and packing up and then moving on, it moving is just very disruptive. But the whole process of people digging into your financial background, um, finding some place to permanently be, and then it falling apart because of mistakes that you made in the past, and you've been able, given the opportunity, to catch up and make amends for that. And the one property that has caused a lot of the angst, you're getting rid of, you realize a whole bunch of stuff. What they tell you as far as financing is just don't be late. You can pay. That's just me. I'm always Johnny late, come lately. I would pay, but just not in an expeditious kind of way. So, this is like one of my oldest accounts. And yes, I have been late, but it's never been foreclosed on. I'm paid up, but they look at your whole picture, and your past habits will reflect negatively, or if you're trying to do something and do something differently, even though you think you've made amends. But in the real estate game and the buyer's game, not so much. The easier part is sell, but then going on to buy, that is becoming more difficult. I've been told like 6 times now, no. This reminds me about when I left my other permanent job and how many jobs I actually applied for. 30 different jobs, was told no 30 different times. That kind of sucks until I actually found my current digs. And this job is a better fit for me. With the job and the bonuses, I've been able to get caught up and get out of the just the sheer amount of debt that I was in over a number of years. It helps when you don't travel. It helps when you don't shop like you ain't got bills to pay, um, because you can actually see credit card debt shrink from 62% usage down to 42%, 52%, and still dropping. If you manage your money and you manage to pay the freaking bill and pay above the minimum. Um, Being a little bit more comfortable, uh, and even though the process, I have a lot of angst as far as the closing itself, because I had the inspection and now about repairs. I have, and there's other things that I've had to think about that have to be cleared before I actually will be able to close on the house. And then the close date is still on the 13th, but it's still, or 14th, because I thought 13th was actually an unlucky number. But anyways, that's just me, that's superstition. But I do know now that I won't be able to move into the place that I would love to move into. They haven't said no to an alternative financing situation, but I'm hopeful that I don't really have any irons in the fire. Um, but I I'm going to have to do another temporary route. I don't want to sign a lease on anything because, number one, every time they roll up on your credit, that can actually reflect negatively. I don't want to be in a long-term lease because of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to permanently relocate out of North Carolina. But at the same time, um, I still have another property that I intend to also sell, and I may be able to sell it as is, if this sale on this house actually goes the best way. And that's going to also just give me further and increased points, um, increase my credit history. But again, because I'm Johnny come lately and I pay slow, I'm probably not going to be able to buy anything until like next year. Um, do your due diligence when you're actually researching different lenders and loan officers, because I was actually ghosted by two big groups, because they didn't want none of the didn't want to tell me the no, and the no why they said no. They were ill equipped or did not want to even tell me um, how I could improve my picture, and how much time it would take, and how what I actually would have to do to make myself a better loan risk. Even if you are an MD and I have this great job, it don't mean shit if you haven't taken care of your credit for the previous couple of decades. So there you go. But I'm more appreciative to a company that I'm actually working with in Tennessee now, called Mortgage, MIG, with Wes Westbrook. He is the bomb. And I am giving him that shout out. But Bank of America home loans and community mortgage, y'all get the big thumbs down. Y'all suck. Um, don't ghost people, your potential clients, even though you lie on your website to say that you'll always have access to me and you can actually speak to me when you don't do shit. You don't return phone calls, you return emails like late. That was Bank of America. Then the flip side is community mortgage, where they just ghost you. I get your cell phone number, I send you text, I call your office, I leave messages, and you don't even give me a firm no, or you don't tell me what I have to, why you had to say no, and what do I need in time, what do I need to do to improve my risk, and what other options do I have, and how I can become better low risk. Wouldn't even give me that advantage, and that's why I'm dragging you now because y'all ain't shit, and I'm so sorry to be able to say that because it's a female owned business, and I've been a Bank of America customer since 1997 when I went into residency. And nerds to y'all, and nerds to community mortgage. So sorry, y'all suck. But the whole process of not being able to buy at this time, um, that sucks. But I'm still relocating to Tennessee. It really literally is a wrap for me in North Carolina. I used to entertain potentially staying here and moving to something more permanent, like in the Charlotte area. I don't think that's even Asheville. I thought about that for a minute, but I don't really see that as even as an option. I got my North Carolina medical license about um, now 19, 20 years ago. I let it go for the first time in 2019 because I have no intent to even live here um, ever again. I don't want to work here. After also, and I'm going to have to do better because my physician is still in Charlotte. Um, but I was actually pushed out. I mean, I didn't work for them for a minute. It takes a while to actually get. It was Carolinas at one point. It takes you. They put you through the ringer to get your privileges there, and then the pediatrics department kind of sucks as far as continuing with your privileges. They were like, "Oh, she's not going to be able. You don't have it. We're not going to give you any shifts um, at the urgent care, so we're going to need to let you go as far as your license. You're not your license, but your privileges here because you haven't practiced. You haven't had a shift since 2018." And I'm like, I'm okay. I actually am okay with that because I don't want to practice in the urgent care and be exposed to the crazy as well as to the viruses, anyways. But I thought if I were wanting to continue with the practice of medicine and I thought you were an employer that I could trust, yeah, it would have been, I would have basically fought and asked for or, gotten a couple of shifts just to keep, to make it make sense to stay on their malpractice. But since I don't want to do that, I'm okay with that. I just don't have any drive to practice and to work those 12-hour shifts. I'm just too lazy and I don't care. So, nerds to y'all too. I hate Atrium. And the difficult thing is, I really have not found any practice or even trust the medical system at this time in um, Chattanooga. And I'm sure there are great groups there. It's just that I haven't found any. Um, if y'all hear about anyone, um, especially in the North Chattanooga area, and I don't have to go to Erlanger, Maine, or Memorial, Maine, or Park Ridge, Maine, I will be ecstatic. But I don't think that that's a possibility, and I don't think they actually have internal medicine clinic that is proposed to be open in the north side of Chattanooga, where I'm going to be located. So, or even They're talking about there's clinics closing, but there are no health clinics that are actually open, especially GPs. But if y'all hear about anything, hit a sister up. TennesseeFro is reading at gmail.com if you have anybody that you would consider that I need to go to, because that would make my transition complete out of North Carolina if I could actually find an internist in Chattanooga. That would actually be great. And I was thinking, would I actually even have to go to Georgia? But the only practices that I know of are like Dalton or even in Calhoun. I don't trust the mugs either. I would have to go to Atlanta, and that was it's like 2 hours away. And I don't think that's actually worth it either. But that's neither here nor there. I'm looking for somebody in Tennessee if I'm going to make that transition. So the other thing that I was also thinking about as we're talking about the selling a property and then buying, I'm going to have to open up my my options. Um, too many people are coming back from Myrtle Beach with COVID. I was thinking about the barrier islands off of Georgia is at the same thing because the numbers are just a bit outrageous. I ain't going to Florida. I'm saying their governor is a fucking jackass. The only reason why I would go to the Gulf Coast of Alabama is because Montgomery's mayor is black and he is really kind of cool. But if I have to do something that is within driving distance of Chattanooga, that's an easy hit. I would possibly hit one of the Gulf Coast states. I still consider Mississippi burning. I'm just saying. And then you got to think of shit like hurricanes. Them hurricanes just like doing the loop-de-loop all through the Gulf states. Because I was also thinking about Texas and this lack of state income taxes that would be really cool to be there too. And I've written my book was San Padres Island, but there's all these other islands right in the Gulf Coast. But hurricanes, girl, hurricanes is what you have to think about and just tropical storms with hurricane strength winds. It's crazy. So I don't know. I know that I'm going to have a mainstay somewhere in Tennessee. But who knows? I may buy Terra and just have a little peak Terra in town when I have to truly be in town. I'm just saying. There's so many colonial homes, etc. Ex plantation or farms that are for sale. And I may still get the opportunity to go see a man about a chicken. Who knows? I'm excited about it. So, coming off of the holiday weekend, we just celebrated July 4th. It's July 5th, and it's a Sunday. This is the day that I used to record on either today, and then I would record again, try to record again, like on Tuesday or Wednesday. But that's been all blown out of the water since COVID and since Picard went off the air, and now that um, Insecure is off of the air. So let's just start there. Insecure last episode, I don't know if I liked it or not. I thought if you didn't think Lawrence was shit or you didn't understand the purpose of Condola, that episode just would make you furious just watching it. I thought that, as usual, Molly was wilding out. She doesn't let anything go. I thought she really did take Andrew for granted. I wish they had developed that storyline a little bit more, because I thought they kind of left us hanging. And I know that HBO has ordered 10 more episodes for like the next season. But I don't think, but we don't know when the next season, when they're going to be able to tape, because a large majority of the country is on lockdown again, unless they're going to move all of the taping to some studio in New York or in the Northeast, and create the set that looks like Inglewood, but they just slammed down. California is going back to self quarantine and shelter in place orders, I'm sure. LA is on lock. So they should have spent more time developing that. Needless to say, they should have spent more time developing that storyline than talking us to death 20 minutes about the chick with postpartum depression and finding her. And then finally, Issa and Molly's were did end back up at the Ethiopian restaurant, but we don't really know what they're talking about. They're probably talking about all of the shit that's getting ready to go down, because one of the things that was revealed is Condola and Lawrence are going to be parents. Condola's keeping the kid. She's saying that you could be just as involved as you want to be. She is in a position where she can support her kid. They could have even developed that a little bit more. Even though most people hate Condola, it would have been interesting to find out her thought process of how she got to that decision. Also, the fact that I think it alluded to, and I think it was confirmed, that her previous pregnancy ended in abortion, and how she felt having to make that decision, and how she felt afterwards, and how the postpartum depression after an abortion is probably a real thing, and how she dealt with that. You know what I mean? So that would have been a little bit more of a take. I don't know if they could have fit all of that into a 30-minute show, but it would have made more sense for them to spend 15 minutes on the Molly Andrew drama, 15 minutes on the Condola, the Condola and Lawrence issue. And now that Issa and Lawrence were trying to make a go of it going back together, they have this complication. I'm not sure, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I was never too happy about Lawrence and Issa getting back together. And maybe that's just me. I was actually rooting for Team Nathan, the light-skinned dude with pretty eyes that cut hair. He seemed to be more real to me. His struggles with mental illness and his depression, was real to me. I thought Lawrence was always a caricature of who he thought a real strong black man should have been. He wasted her time for 5 years, and then when he finally gets away from her, he builds a life, and then he wants her back because he thought he was never deserving. He always acted like, I have to say the right thing, I have to be the right thing in order to be an effective black man. And I always thought he was a pussy-ass wimp. So I was never for Team Lawrence anyways. But I guess you go back to what you're comfortable with. And if that was Issa's judge, that's just on her. It's just that I was never, ever Team Lawrence. But I'm always Team strong black woman trying to make a difference. And it just kills me that she went back to this dude with his own complications, and now she gets the 1-2 punch. Now he has a baby by somebody else from a previous relationship. There's always going to be complications with baby mama drama, even though she says there's not. We see how Condola treated her when they even weren't dating, and how she ghosted her at the time when she really needed her. So can you only imagine when she goes through the thick of this pregnancy that she's not going to bring the drama? Yes, ma'am, I think she is. But with all of that said, it was definitely kind of a cliffhanger. There's a lot of loose threads. They was trying to do a whole bunch in that 36 minute episode. It's just that they could have spent more time on other storylines, versus the whole postpartum depression thing. I never had kids. I've had a full abdominal hysterectomy. They took out tubes as well as my ovaries. So I've never had children. I've never had to make. I've never had the dis, the horror of postpartum depression. So I cannot relate to that particular character's trial. But I don't think they should have spent that much time on it. Did admire that we have women, trans as well as cisgender women disappearing every day, black women disappearing every day, and no one is looking for them. You know, so I do give them their props to them giving the time to looking for this woman, but it is a show they could have spent just as much time developing the other storylines, along what crowd and watchers like me expected. As I said, this is a Sunday. I'm waiting, and I think my steak is actually finished cooking. I actually made a green salad today, with real baked beans seasoned with smoked pork chow. So I'm ready to hit that. But I spent this past July 4th in quarantine because I couldn't go anywhere because everybody's wilding out and COVID never went away. But now we're testing more. So we're seeing a 50,000 new cases daily of this scourge or this plague. So I've not gone to the beach. I ain't going to nobody's pool because you can't social distance, and I ain't trying to pick that shit up. They're talking about it's airborne. No shit. So I ordered crab legs and essentials from the Tasty Crab in Fayetteville. Um, watch my two most favorite movies on the planet, Black Panther and Independence Day. Cried at the same exact places in them damn movies. I love the first Independence Day. I love to watch Jeff Goldberg pimping. Also, the strength of the black characters are a black leg superhero movie in the Black Panther. It was brilliantly scripted and shot. I loved both of those movies, and I cannot believe that Independence Day dropped. What is it, 2001, and how bad baller it is. And just if I am now going to have to put that on the rotation as part being my part of celebrating the July 4th. Watching both of those movies and ordering seafood. That's how you have to roll, especially here. And also spending my Sunday um, with the New York Times. I have not had an actual gray lady since March because of COVID. It doesn't get shipped to the Barnes and Nobles anymore. It's not available outside of New York in the Walgreens. So we don't have newsstands on the corner anywhere anymore. So there you go. But I am just excited about some of my routine I'm still able to do just in a different form. And I think that is what's going to get us through it. And I'm thankful. I mean, a lot of people don't have this opportunity. A lot of the extrovert podcasters and people that have had to be shelter in place, then they got a little bit of freedom and then they had to be slammed back down again. They are having a fit. Um, they're not blessed with the day job. Their day job is their podcast and movies that are on hold forever. They can't do their podcast tours, going city to city because a lot of the city have reverted back to lockdown. So they are all having a fit, and I'm just blessed to sit here that I can plan to do other things. I can look at what's going on in the media, that a lot of the protests, you're not hearing, they're not getting the same footage anymore. You're hearing about arrests and people are still wilding out. But now we're going from protest to policy. And now we're going to see what are the next steps. What are the laws that are going to need to be changed? That's what I'm looking for. How are we going to combat voter suppression now in this election year? I think it is great that you're changing it's a small world ride. I think it's great to change the imagery associated with Aunt Jemima. I think those things are fantastic. I even think you're considering changing the Washington Redskins when it's been obviously racist since the inception back in the 30s. Why don't you just stop killing us? Why don't we just stop right there? Why don't you basically report, why do Black Lives Matter? Why can't you get your cops to stop fucking killing us in the streets and not giving a damn about body cams? Why don't we just start there? And then you can increase it to look at all of those other uh, intricately entwined racist slogans and media images, etc., that is evasive and invasive of our society. But why don't we just realize what Black Lives Do Matter really means? It means that this life of this African American woman, African American child, African American man means so much that I won't kill you and to make another snuff film for them to actually put on air. Why don't we just start there? So thank you for changing your industry. Thank you for doing all of those little things. But the grand, bigger scheme of those, decreasing those types of policies, making sure that officers that are truly a problem, they are no longer officers. They get punished according to the riffraff and the thug that they are, and they don't need to work in anybody else's law enforcement anywhere else in the country. If you murder someone, that should be the bottom line. So, to everyone that wants to know how, where the change should start, what we should be doing as far as being the change that we all need, start right with knowing what Black Lives Matter, respecting that, demanding that the police are equal, and they respond with the appropriate amount of force, making sure that it's not okay to shoot somebody in the back um, because they were drunk in the Wendy's drive-through, making sure that you didn't die while being Black and asleep, like they bust open your door and like Breonna Taylor. Making sure that we do not forget when people wow out, when people lose their lives unneedlessly, a life snuffed out because we got a whole bunch of people that purport and continue to support systemic racism in all of its forms, and it's okay. Those are the types of things we need to really now. Everyone knows that it exists. Now we need to now see what the change is actually going to be. We can't go nowhere. Nobody is letting us into their country. All of the borders are closed to United States because we couldn't get control of this particular plague. So now that we got time, let's look into the food deserts. Let's look into police brutality and making the policy changes. Let's look into these managerial programs that are inherently closed to people of color, and other genders. Let's just start there. Let's look into and try to solve all of these trans men and women that are dying every single day, coming up dead because there could be a serial killer, people within the community that may be hunting these women and men like they and throwing them away like they don't mean anything. Let's just start there. We got time. Because y'all were wilding out Memorial Day and they open up too soon, we're not going to be able to get a handle on this shit till probably next spring. Let's just start right there, looking at how we can solve all of these, looking and rationally solve all of these problems. Because we got time. Ain't nobody going anywhere for a year. I got to work on my credit. Y'all, we got to work on all of these things that ail our society to be able to come back stronger, and to be able to make a meaningful change and to be able to live and truly redefine what it truly means to be a United States citizen, and truly make America strong again for all Americans, not just a few, but all Americans. Again, we have the time, so what are we going to do with it? In celebration of, let's make the goal for next Independence, Juneteenth and Independence Day, how we emerged from this disaster, to be even stronger than we were before. Recognizing that we're going to still have a lot of work to do, but let's make that as a true, what our next goal and next true celebration is going to be next year. I'm just saying. So I am coming up on the end of this program, and it's been interesting, trying to create the podcast for this past week. There's a lot of stuff that I could have commented on, and in the upcoming weeks, I'll be talking about things such as gun laws, gun controls, and why more Black people, in particular women, are strapping up, voting, in the upcoming election, and who will finally be chosen as the running mate for Vice President Joe Biden. I'm hopeful that we can call him President Joe Biden. But most of my previous podcasts I've heavily scripted them because it takes me a minute, or I get off track very, very easily. And I find it easier when I actually write out what I'm actually going to say. I did not do that this particular week. But I did want to share with you one of my writings that I just started working on towards the end of last week. And you can ask yourself why a forever single, middle-aged Black woman would know anything about Black love. Well, even though I haven't been in a relationship more than a minute at a time, I can truly tell you that I know what it's not. And I know that relationships are complicated. And I thought I would try my hand at this, trying to create a relationship in my head and get down on paper how I would want a relationship to be, knowing that it would be quite different. This is my first run at what I call Black Love and the Impostors. We were supposed to be in love. I was the girl next door. He was that boy next door. We were part of the oldest Black family in Chattanooga. The families had worked the rivers even before the Civil War. Then they moved on to the factories, and then they moved on to the trains. And even when Amtrak removed Chattanooga from the end of the rail, he continued to the university through the ROTC and played at the University of Florida for the famed Spurrier machine. I would attend University of Tennessee, Knoxville, graduate valedictorian, and against all the odds, continue top of my class through Harvard Medicine. From the outside, we looked like love. David was that all-star favorite son of parents, all-around good guy, never gave them any trouble, no jail time, no baby mamas, unheard of in our generation. Smart and physically inclined, but what most people didn't know was his deep, non-ending depression. Catherine was that good daughter, brilliant SATs and MCAT, high scores. She was a mechanical engineer and then she went into medical school. She always found, they always found the way back to each other because of the calm. With each other, they were happy enough, affectionate, too much really, but completely inauthentic. We played the part of a loving couple, a poorly casted Tyler Perry play. At the requisite family gatherings, we would appear together, yearning to be elsewhere, he wanting to be in a dark room, she wanting to be at an event next to the river where no one knows her and she can dance like no one is watching. So we both showed up to our engagement party like stoners. Well, I kind of was. He told me a while later he was barely able to move from the Quaaludes. Both of us were numb to it all. Our mothers, sisters, aunts in hyperactive mode to create the wedding of the century. Neither of us caring about any of it. We were supposed to be happily ever after it until we weren't. We were engaged for over 18 months, but the show went on in Tennessee. I was interviewing for residency and David walked on to the Jets training focus. Our mothers, although from the South, were fashion forward and Vogue obsessed. I was going to be a Kleinfeld bride. I was marrying a New York Jet wide receiver. I had to be married in the great Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. We were to be the king and queen of Black society, although the social elite of New York didn't give a damn about us. We were all Bamas to them. What kept us both alive and together as teens and into our adulthood was our ability to talk things through and off each other off the ledge. Although 20 years stretched out in silences, we were still together and we had changed remarkably little. But although we coexisted in our lives went on separately. After leaving the NFL, David played 14 years, he was one of the first investors in the remaking of Brooklyn, and he modeled his capital and investments and stayed away from Madoff schemes. He ended up extremely wealthy, and he landed a recurring spot on ESPN with the New York base. Kat mostly worked philanthropic endeavors. She came back to Tennessee as a business analyst for Blue Tennessee, and they had bought a mid-century modern home on Vine. Both in a hurry to run away, they would find themselves back where it all began. When the first cases were reported in January before New York City became Armageddon, David returned to their home on Vine with his friend and manager Royal in tow. Royal was actually from Marietta, but he also always told people he grew up in Atlanta, when all of us in the know that Marietta and Atlanta are two separate places. And that's where I'm going to leave you in this particular part, because I'm also working on the other cast of characters that are going to inhabit the world of Black Love, the Impostors. It goes on how they all end up back in Chattanooga and how they survive the COVID epidemic. And I think you'll enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed creating it. And this is how I'm going to end this episode. And I'm hoping that you will drop me commentary at TNFroisreading@gmail.com. And that if it's non-trolly, I'll actually read your comments on air. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'll give you the next part of Black Love and the Impostors coming up in the ensuing weeks. And I hope you guys have a great start to your week. And I wish you love, peace, and much blessings in this our very tricky time that we live in. And thank you.